With just 1 week left until the wedding, I felt everything was going smoothly between Ethan and me. We had planned the ceremony at a luxury resort in Asheville, North Carolina. However, at the last minute, his family suddenly changed the plan and took Ethan on a family vacation to Clearwater, Florida, right before the big day. Even though I felt something was off about it, I didn't want to create tension and simply accepted it. But when Ethan returned, his attitude made me feel an inexplicable distance. I've loved Ethan for the past 3 years. Although our relationship was not always perfect, I always believed our love was genuine, something I would cherish for life. He was the man I dreamed of, the one I imagined walking with me through life, overcoming every storm together. We had shared countless sweet moments, built plans for the future, and though we occasionally had small arguments, I never gave them much thought. That's normal in love, right? A real love must have moments of anger and frustration, a love that can withstand challenges. I used to think we were the perfect team, an inseparable couple. But there was one thing I could never change, something I could never overcome, and that was his family. Every time I stepped into Ethan's house, I never felt like I belonged. I clearly remember the first few times when I stood there hesitantly, trying to greet Diane and Richard, but they never responded with warmth or welcome. Diane would always scrutinize me from head to toe, her eyes constantly scanning, from the clothes I wore, to the way I ate, to the words I spoke. I could feel it clearly. She was comparing me to other prospects she believed were more worthy of Ethan. And at times, she made no effort to hide the fact that I wasn't good enough. Her questions were always filled with subtle jabs. Have you found a stable job yet? Or can your family afford a wedding like this? These weren't just concerned questions. They were ridicule, a reminder that I was just an ordinary girl, unfit to enter her world. As for Richard, he was less talkative, but whenever he did speak, I could hear the disapproval in his voice. His stories about work, about powerful connections, they were all just ways to emphasize that I didn't belong in the same social class as their family. I remember once, he talked about a party he attended with a wealthy friend, then suddenly turned to me and said, people like us always have to maintain a certain standing in society. Not everyone can be part of these gatherings. Those words weren't just a casual story. They were like a slap to my face, a reminder that I had nothing that made me worthy of their family. Every time I tried to talk to them, I could feel the lack of interest, sometimes even outright contempt, in their eyes. And what hurt the most wasn't the words themselves, but the way they never looked at me with friendliness or affection. I always felt judged, like a stranger in their presence, as if I had no right to exist in their world. That was the worst feeling I've ever experienced. Ethan's family didn't just dislike me, they despised me, and I couldn't deny that it deeply hurt. Every time Diane looked at me, I felt like I was being put on trial, judged as someone who didn't meet the standard. Those looks, those veiled comments, they were like sharp knives, piercing me over and over, making me feel more and more pushed away from Ethan and his family. That feeling was truly painful, and I couldn't take it much longer. They didn't like me, and I knew it. That feeling was like a razor blade cutting into my heart every time I stepped into their home. Each step I took felt like an intrusion into their private space, a violation of the standards they had set for Ethan. Even though Ethan always told me not to worry about his family, that they just needed time to get used to me, I knew deep down that he too could feel the tension. His family didn't accept me, and that was something I couldn't change, no matter how much we loved each other. I kept trying to believe that one day they would change, but each time I entered their home and saw Diane's cold gaze and Richard's indifference, I felt that hope slowly slipping away. I loved Ethan, but that love didn't seem strong enough to break through the cold wall of his family. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fit into their world. I couldn't become a part of that family. And I realized that no matter how much effort I put in, I would always remain an outsider in the very relationship I had poured my whole heart into. Life with Ethan wasn't always easy, but I believed we could get through anything together. However, everything started to change after the trip he took with his family. When Ethan came back from the family trip, I stood waiting for him in the living room, my heart filled with doubt and worry. He walked in, and right away, I noticed a clear change in his demeanor. His eyes avoided mine, as if he didn't want to look at me directly. and the smile he used to greet me with had become dull and lifeless. His gestures no longer carried the warmth they once had. Instead, there was avoidance, as if he were trying to escape me. I sensed something was wrong, like a storm slowly approaching. I knew something was about to explode. Ethan, I called softly, trying to stay calm even though my heart felt like an overinflated balloon. What's going on? He looked at me awkwardly, his lips moving, searching for words. Finally, he took a deep breath and said, his voice low and unfamiliar, I think we should take a break before the wedding. His words hit me like a shock. A break? I repeated, trying to hold back the wave of emotion rising inside me. Right before the wedding? He nodded, but I could see the tension in his body, the confusion that kept him from standing steady. I said nothing. Instead, I silently handed him a folder I had prepared in advance. What's this? He asked, his eyes filled with confusion, looking at me as if I had just handed him a ticking time bomb. Details from your trip, I replied, hiding my emotions, trying to keep my voice cold even as my heart pounded like a drum. I think we need to have a serious conversation about what happened. He began flipping through the pages of the folder, but as the first photos appeared, the color drained from his face. I could see the worry, the panic starting to show in his eyes. What did you do? He stammered, his hands trembling as he kept flipping through the pages. Each photo hit him like a punch to the face, each image revealing a truth he couldn't deny. You did this? He choked out, his voice cracking while his hands shook, flipping through the pages faster and faster. How could you do this? I didn't respond immediately. I just watched him. I had already anticipated his reaction. I was prepared for this. Each photo he turned brought a wave of pain, and I knew every moment captured would force him to face a truth he had no intention of admitting. Ethan's expression shifted from confusion to sheer panic. He flipped through the photos frantically, as if looking for an excuse, an explanation for what was right in front of him. In the pictures were images of him sitting with his parents, laughing with a brunette girl at a bar in Clearwater. He stared at each photo, his eyes wide with fear. I sat there, saying nothing, just watching him flip through the folder, through every picture, while inside me, every emotion had been compressed into a tidal wave. The way he looked at each image, each line of the report, made my heart feel like it was being ripped apart, bit by bit. Those photos, I had asked a private investigator to take them. Every moment, every expression, every look he gave that brunette girl, it was all crystal clear in those pictures. I didn't need to say anything more. He looked at them, and the more he saw, the more panicked he became. I didn't have to speak because everything was already laid out. I just sat there, silently waiting. I didn't need to explain anything. He could see it all for himself. Every detail I had meticulously gathered. Sophie, my best friend, I said, my voice steady even though I felt a storm brewing inside. She saw you, your parents, and that girl sitting together in the bar in Clearwater. She saw everything I couldn't. I didn't even need to tell her what to look for. Ethan was silent, his eyes now full of confusion and exhaustion. It's not, he whispered weakly. It can't be. I didn't do anything wrong. I couldn't take it anymore. Every word felt like a blade slicing into my pain. You didn't do anything wrong. You were sitting next to her, laughing, while your parents encouraged the whole thing. My heart shattered as I said those words. Your family is trying to replace me right before our wedding, Ethan. Your whole family is in on this. At that moment, Ethan fell completely silent, his hands trembling, with nothing left to say. The photos felt like knives stabbing straight into my heart. Each image was a painful slap. Each moment his family shared with that girl made me feel like I no longer mattered to them. And in that moment, I no longer saw him as the man I loved, but as a weak, dishonest person who couldn't face the truth. I was in deep pain, but my reason wouldn't allow me to end things there. It wouldn't be fair to let Ethan and his family get away with this. So I began planning my revenge. A sweet revenge by pretending to let it all go and allowing the wedding to proceed as planned. Ethan had no clue. He must have still believed I was the kind of woman who loved him blindly. I walked into the wedding venue, the place where I once imagined myself in a pure white dress, standing beside Ethan and stepping into a new life. That was the dream I always held on to, a beautiful day when our love would become the foundation for our future. But now, all that remained was the shattered remnants of that past. I had changed. I was no longer the woman willing to accept a life built by Ethan's family. A sense of freedom surged through me like a powerful wave. All my emotions, all my worries rose up at once, and I knew I had to act. I decided to turn today into something special, a gathering to expose the truth. Nothing would be hidden anymore. Everything that happened would be revealed, and no one, not even Ethan's family, could escape the questions I brought with me. As the guests settled into their seats, the tension in the air was thick, like a heavy fog. Then Diane and Richard entered the room, and every step they took was like a hammer blow against the silence. The whole room felt heavy, as if the entire world had turned its attention toward them. Diane, with her piercing stare, and Richard, who remained silent but whose vacant eyes made everything feel even more suffocating. I could feel the tension in their every step, their every breath, and I knew I couldn't wait any longer. It had to be said now. I stepped forward without a word of greeting. I simply placed the projector on the table, no trembling, no weakness. Then I turned on the screen and displayed the photos and videos from the investigator's report. The images appeared, clear, cold, exposing the entire truth about their trip. Each photo was a blade to my heart. Ethan sitting beside the brunette girl, the moments his parents laughed and joked, the affectionate gestures between them. All of it pierced through everything I had once believed, every hope I had poured into this relationship. I took a deep breath. It felt like a cold wind swept over me. Then I turned and looked straight at Diane and Richard. By now, I couldn't hide the fury rising inside me. "What did you think you were doing?" I asked, my voice sharp, every word an arrow aimed directly at them. "What kind of plan did you think you had the right to make? Who gave you the authority to replace me just days before your son's wedding?" Whispers erupted among the guests. Suspicious eyes turned toward Ethan's family like waves crashing down on them. They couldn't believe what was happening. Neither could I. Diane looked at me, her eyes cold and filled with hatred. That stare hadn't changed, but in it, I caught a flicker of worry, just for a moment. She said nothing, but the scowl on her face only made the truth clearer. I knew she not only believed she had the right to do this, she had wanted to end the wedding. I felt trapped in a story I couldn't escape from. Richard stood there motionless, his empty stare as lifeless as if he were looking at an inanimate object. His silence made everything heavier, as if we were all in a sealed room waiting for a storm to break. "I found out everything," I continued, my voice no longer restrained. The anger inside me rose like a violent wave, impossible to hold back. "You tried to replace me with another girl while I was still planning our wedding. Ethan, can you explain that to me?" I turned to him, my eyes shooting sparks. He just stood there, saying nothing, his head bowed low, not daring to look at me. His eyes were filled with confusion, but there were no words left to justify himself. Everything was already too clear. I turned back to look at Diane and Richard, no longer holding back. My anger surged like a crashing wave. "You deceived me, didn't you? His parents planned this from the beginning, didn't they? You wanted him to leave me, replace me with that girl. And you really thought I wouldn't find out?" Diane cleared her throat, trying to maintain composure, but I could see the worry in her eyes, even though she tried to mask it. She spoke softly, but the tension in her voice was unmistakable. "Sweetheart, don't make a scene. This is all just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I laughed, but there was no joy in that laugh. It was sharp, like a blade slicing through their lies. "A misunderstanding? 1 week before the wedding, you tried to replace me with someone else. Who is she, Diane? What value does she have in your eyes that you were so willing to do this to me?" Diane took a deep breath, her eyes now brimming with hatred she could no longer hide. "I just want what's best for Ethan," she said, her voice cold, though she tried to sound gentle. "You're not the only one who gets to decide, you know? That girl, Lily, is a good woman. They could be happy together, if not for you. But you." She looked me straight in the eye, emphasizing every word. "You are not good enough to be a daughter-in-law of this family." Every word felt like a punch to my chest. Each syllable poured into my ears like unbearable contempt. "Mom, Do you really believe that? I looked at her, unable to comprehend what I was hearing. To you, I'm just something that can be replaced at any moment? You really think I'm not good enough to stand next to Ethan, yet you're fine watching your son make this mistake with your blessing? Ethan stood up, his eyes full of panic and despair. He walked toward me, his hand trembling as he reached out like he wanted to hold me back, keep me from leaving. Please don't do this, he said, his voice cracking with guilt and fear. It's not what you think. I didn't mean for any of this. I just didn't know what to do. I looked at him, my heart tightening. For so long, I believed he was the one I could trust, the one I would walk beside for the rest of my life. But now, all I felt was betrayal. His words meant nothing anymore. He no longer deserved even a second of my attention. I don't need to hear your explanation, I said coldly, my voice devoid of any emotion. You let them do this to me. You didn't have the courage to stand up for me, not even to face me. And you think I'd go back to someone like that? They tried to say more, but I no longer cared to listen. Don't speak. I cut him off, my voice burning with fury. You and your family planned this from the start, Ethan. You treated me like a game, someone replaceable at any time. You have no right to apologize. You didn't stand up for me, and now you've lost the right to explain anything. I was shaking with anger. I couldn't believe I once loved someone like that. Someone who, even when the truth was laid bare, still couldn't face it, still clung to lies. You really are a coward, Ethan, I shouted, my voice like a slap across his face. A coward who can't protect the one he claims to love, who lets his family control his life. Do you even realize what you've done? You made me feel like I was nothing to you and to your family. He stood there, no longer able to meet my gaze. His eyes were full of regret, but it was too late. And me? I couldn't stay there another second. I couldn't bear it anymore. I turned my back on him without another word. Don't ever come near me again, Ethan, I said. I felt as if I had just been set free. Every moment of tension, every lie, all of it vanished in an instant. It was like I had opened a massive door and escaped a haunted house. Finally, I no longer had to live under their web of deceit. Everything was clear now, and I no longer feared the people who had betrayed me. I stood up, not because I was weak, but because I had found strength in myself. But just then, the door swung open again. And there she was, Lily, the brunette girl I had seen in the photos, stepped inside. I froze, unable to believe my eyes. Each step she took felt like a punch straight to my heart. She stood there, her face blank with innocence, as if she had no idea what was happening, as if it were all just a harmless joke. Sis, I don't understand how this all happened, Lily said, her voice hesitant, filled with awkwardness and confusion. I just wanted to be friends with you. Her words felt like an explosion in my mind. I couldn't believe it. My heart stopped for a moment, and a lump formed in my throat. It wasn't just the confusion. It was the brutal truth laid bare before me. Friends? I laughed, but the sound was sharp and cold like a blade. You're the one his family picked to replace me at this wedding, aren't you? You were used, Lily. Used by them to destroy everything, weren't you? Lily lowered her head, unable to meet my gaze. She couldn't say a word, just stood there like a puppet in the hands of manipulators. The fury inside me flared up like an unstoppable fire. I looked into the eyes of Diane and Richard, the people I had spent so long trying to understand, to accept. But now, all I saw was a dark cloud, no longer the family I once hoped to be part of. I can't live in a relationship built on lies, I said, each word slicing through the hidden truth that had lingered far too long. You didn't just betray me, you treated me like a game. You removed me from his life as if I meant nothing. This wedding ends here. I turned to Ethan. And in that moment, I saw that he couldn't even look at me. His eyes averted, his hands trembling. He just stood there in silence, as if all strength to explain himself had left him. And I knew the truth was undeniable now. Every word I spoke tore apart the fake shell that had been hiding the reality for so long. And then everything shattered. This wedding would never happen. After all the truth was exposed, it felt like a massive door had opened, freeing me from the lies and the crushing weight of that family. I didn't have to endure it anymore. I hadn't just freed myself from Ethan's family, I had reclaimed my life. After canceling the wedding and revealing the entire truth, I felt as though a tremendous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Everything felt cleansed, and I could finally breathe freely again. No more deceitful relationships. No more betrayal from people I once trusted. I had not only freed myself from Ethan's family, but I also made the decision to restart my life in a way I had never dared to before. I returned to the job I had always loved, the one I had put on hold for years while focusing on the relationship. I found myself alive again through passion and drive, slowly realizing that I had never really abandoned myself. That job not only helped me regain stability, but it brought back the joy I had lost during all those years. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who had always stood by me, but whom I had drifted from because of the sacrifices I made for Ethan. I began mending my relationship with my family, those who had always supported me, but whom I had pushed away out of fear they wouldn't accept Ethan. Now, I truly feel I've grown and become stronger than ever before. Though I can't deny the hardships I faced, I believe I overcame them with incredible resilience. My happiness doesn't come from a lavish wedding or the approval of Ethan's family. Real joy comes from living my own life, no longer fearing judgment or pressure from anyone. I am free, and that is the most precious thing I have gained. This feeling is truly liberating. After everything I've been through, I feel free, as if I've reclaimed control over my life. The wedding isn't just canceled. I've freed myself from Ethan and his family. No one can control my life anymore. I'm no longer a pawn in the elaborate plan they built. Finally, I can look at myself in the mirror without shame or regret. And I will never return to a man or a family like that. My life will no longer be overshadowed by the darkness of betrayal. I will live on my own terms, making choices I believe in, without worrying about those who criticize or try to control my future. That is the freedom I've won back for myself.